All right. Hello. Welcome. My name is Ellen. I work for PPL as a library instructor, and I will be the instructor for this virtual program today. I also have here with me Meredith. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith. I'm a librarian with the Plano Public Library. I will be moderating the chat. As you may have noticed, you're muted for the entirety of the course. But if you have any questions, do put those in the chat box, and we will answer them as we can. If any of them need directly answering by Ellen, I will share them with her. Otherwise, I can answer questions as well. If you have any technical questions relating to Zoom, put those in the question and answer section, and we'll get those taken care of as quick as possible. So welcome, welcome.
All right, thank you, Meredith. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that I am using the latest version of Excel, which is the 2016 version. Your screen might look a little different from mine, but most of what I'm teaching in this program is possible to do in all versions of Excel. And without further ado, today's program is how to create this wonderful, beautiful piece of software that we're calling a pivot table. A pivot table is a powerful and flexible table in Excel that allows you to summarize your data, data from like a list or from a different table. And the example that we'll be using today is a table from here. This is the True Blue Ocean fundraiser, which is a fictional fundraiser. It will allow you to easily organize and arrange your data to meet your needs. This pivot table here. So we have our officers, we have subcategories, and then we have the method of how people have donated to their fundraiser. All right. So this is from the end. We'll be working bottom to top. So the end results at the end of this program will look very similarly to what you see on screen. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my working file. So it looks nothing from the table that we had before. So we are starting from scratch. Before creating a pivot table, we want to make sure that our data is entered correctly. Data needs to be accurate to work in a pivot table. So we want to make sure all of this doesn't have any blank spaces. This is available. This worksheet is available for download should you want to follow along. You can also view the recording of this program if you would like to practice later. In your data, you want to make sure the columns up here are named at the top. If they have a good descriptive name, they'll be easy to work with later. Pivot tables need to know exactly where your data needs to start and end. If we have any blank columns, rows in between, it can be challenging for the pivot table to get an accurate data. Be sure to remove any unnecessary blank spaces. And we're just double checking that I have no blank spaces in this work file.
Hey, Ellen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Where do they download the practice table from?
That is an excellent question. Um,
I believe that, hi, this is Jessica, the Zoom tech support. I believe that the video and the worksheets will be emailed to you after the program is done.
So it's going to be a follow along after rather than during the program, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jessica. I was about to say, wait, I had this in my notes, but yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Putting our data into the Excel table will prepare the accurate data. First, we want to make sure a cell is in the table is highlighted, and it can be any cell. Next, we'll go up to the ribbon up here, and we will go to our Insert tab, and we're going to select the table icon right here. So that will be the third icon in the ribbon. We'll go ahead and select. You will see a Create Table dialog will appear. Excel is good with estimating and highlighted cells with data in them. So we can just double check that all of it has been highlighted. Make sure that the box for My Table has headers is checked. So we do, and that's perfect. We'll go ahead and select OK. So now our table looks similarly to our table example that we had that was shown in the beginning of the program. You'll notice that the column headers now have fillers, which allow for limited manipulation of the data. To really expand our ability to rework the data, pivot tables generate fields which represent the columns in your table. These fields can be dragged and dropped into different areas to change how and what data is displayed. So to create our pivot table, just like how we made our table, we're going to click somewhere in the table here. And we're going to go up to the ribbon and we're going to select the Insert tab once more. But instead of table, since we already created it, we want to select the pivot table right here, which is the first icon. A dialog box will appear on screen. The first half of the dialog box here is all about which data to use. We created a table earlier, and Excel automatically selects the data to use. As we see, everything all now is highlighted. The second half of the dialog box is where you want the pivot table to be located. We have two options, new worksheet and existing worksheet. When choosing the existing worksheet options, so let's go ahead and select this for the purposes. You can select a blank cell anywhere in the existing working spreadsheet. So let's say I go ahead and select G4. This will be the starting point of my pivot table. For this program, we are going to select new worksheet. We're going to select OK. And the pivot table will appear. Using a new worksheet gives your pivot table a cleaner look. So currently it is empty, but we're going to go ahead and explain this plane over here. The pivot table fields task plane. This is the tool used to rearrange the data to meet our needs. It automatically appears whenever a cell in the pivot table is highlighted. The default setting for this pane is a side bar on the right side of the screen. However, we can move it as a separate window. Make sure our mouse has the 4 arrows, and we can just drag it along and we can put it anywhere on our screen. We can even dock it to the right of the spreadsheet if we like. I'm going to go ahead and put this back because I prefer this on the right side. This pane, we have all of our column headers from our table right here. And below below the fields are the 4 areas we can place the fields in. Each one affects the layout of the pivot table, which can help highlight useful data. With the pivot table areas, we can choose what fields to display as rows, display them as columns, how to summarize our data with the value, and then filters for any of the fields. We can use the check boxes, which automatically put all the numeric fields into rows. We can simply drag the fields among these areas and observe how the pivot table layout changes. Like so, let's go ahead and select one of these, and we simply click and drag, and we have something that appears on screen in our pivot table. So any pivot table, the first thing we want to look at is our value area. This area, in a way, summarizes your data's results. As we did before, we clicked and dragged the amount into the value fields. And if we ever want to make a field disappear from that area, you just simply click and drag it to the Excel sheet and it disappeared, and we have an empty pivot table once more. But for this purposes, we'll go ahead and click and drag our amount back into values. And you can see at the top, you see sum of amount. The number that we see currently is 6391. And this is the total of the yearly invoice. So in our table example, you see that everything is in currency, while in our working pivot table, it is just a generic number. We can change the formatting. If we put numbers in the value field in this example, normally the generic number is the default. So we will manually have to change the formatting by selecting this tiny arrow on the right. We'll go ahead and select or click, and we'll hit the value fields setting. So it brings you up a dialog box, and you have the number format down here. You'll select, And then you have the format cells. So this is where you can change the number that is in the cell. So since we are working with currency or money, we will select the currency here. And we can customize it how we like. Normally, I don't like any decimals with my money, so I'm just only going to put just the amount. So we'll go ahead and select OK to confirm our changes. And to finalize our changes, we'll hit OK once more. And now our generic 6391 is now $6,391. So if you are not sure which field should go into the value area, look for any kind of amount or quantity, like dollar signs or duration, such as hours and minutes. Now, I was very curious about this, but like what happens if you place a field with no numbers into the value field? And I'm going to go ahead and show you really quickly what. So we're going to go ahead and discard our amount, and we're going to go ahead and click and drag the relation officer, which only has names in the value. So there are no numbers, just names, but we still have a number appear. So what the pivot table did was count the number of cells that are in that field. All right, go ahead and discard that, and we'll bring our amount back. And because this is brand new, I'm going to go ahead and create the currency what's more, and perfect. We are back on track. All right. We have our field in our value area, but it's not very informative. We need to break up this sum of amount into useful categories of information. So we want something like this. I'll go ahead and go back. We can start by adding a field to our rows area by selecting a relation officer. That is a good start. We'll go ahead and click and drag our rows. And now it's starting to look like a table with categories. Names appear under the header row labels. Adding these fields changes the pivot table's layout by showing the summary of amount divided by the person who brought in the contribution. It's possible to add multiple fields to further define our data. Let's go ahead and we're going to click and drag type right here into our row field. Our pivot table layout has gained a new level of information. The first field listed is in the row area. So here with Allison, Dawn, our officers, is the primary field. The next field in the row field, or the row area, excuse me, is the secondary field. And that is our type. So that's like donations, food. This is where the contribution came from. And it is divided up in the data by subcategories. So It doesn't always have to be in this order. The fields are interchangeable. So let's go ahead and put our relation officer field underneath our type field. And you can see some of the changes. The pivot table layout reflects type field as the primary field and our relation officers as secondary field. The date field right here can be added. Adding date field, you will notice that two fields have appeared. So we have our months and we have our dates. You can always remove dates if the information is overwhelming. Since we have dates in the field, you can always click on January and you can see the date for it. March, you can see the date for it. So it expands if you have the date in the fields. So, but information can be a little overwhelming. So for the purposes of this program, we're going to drag a date into our Excel, and our pivot table only focuses on the months. So, and as you can see, putting too many fields into one area can expand, and it causes a lot of scrolling in our pivot table. So, but we have other areas that we can put our fields in. And one of them is the column field. Adding a field to the column will give us specific insight on our data. And it will also expand our pivot table very similarly to our row labels. So let's go ahead and put our method field into our columns. And you can see that the column fields will be at the top of the table, and the data in between your row area and your value area of your worksheet. Like world fields, you can add secondary fields to your column area. So let's go ahead and put type into columns. So it has expanded. We have our months, we have our relation officers at the top with the type of method and the total type of method. So the good news is the pivot table, you can rearrange your data however you want. So we can always add or get rid of data. So since it looks a little overwhelming currently, we're going to go ahead and get rid of months. And these are not gone permanently. It's just gone from the pivot table. They're all stored up here. So, and we'll go ahead and put type back into rows. So now we currently have our cash, credit, and the methods up here at the top. We have our relation officers and the subcategories of the donation contributions. So, and it's looking very similarly to the pivot table I showed you in the beginning of the program. So we have our row area and our column area filled with data. Though pivot table organizes our data very nicely, we have the option to focus on specific sets of data using the field area right here. And it works very similarly to the filter tool here in the under the data tab. So if you are using, if your data is yearly, months and date fields work effectively in the filter area. So let's go ahead and add months. We're going to click and drag it into the filter area. And you can see at the very top, it has added the filter, a filter area. So if we select this, the arrow, we can see all of the months displayed. So let's say we would like to select February. We'll go ahead and say okay. And we can see only February contributions. So there are many other visual filters tools for the pivot table. Should you want to explore these options, they are in the Analyzing tab. Right up here. But you have to make sure that your pivot table is selected. So it will be in this area right here. If we have time after this program, I can demonstrate to you these visual filters. So, but it is looking pretty well. So we got a change in information. We forgot to add a number or a currency or contribution, sorry. So, and how to do that is we actually go back to our table. And let's go ahead and scroll all the way to the bottom. And let's say Lacey forgot to tell us, oh, I sold a few shirts on December 29th. So say she got some shirts and the people's she got cash for it, and they bought a significant amount of shirts. They bought $100 worth of shirts, and a few families bought a few $100 shirts. All right. So we want to make sure all of our data is correct. So Lacey had sold $300 worth of shirts in cash. So when we go back to our pivot table, you will notice that Lacey has food donations, but she has nothing for shirts. It is currently empty, but we just updated our table, so there should be at least 300 in here, and the grand total should have changed to at least 300. The update is there, but we manually have to change it. And the way that we can is if we right-click on the table itself, there is a refresh button here. So when we go ahead and select refresh, now that we see 300 in Lacey, and the grand total has changed. So we have 300 of profit. So Meredith, do we have any questions?
None at this time. Yeah, right now we're good.
All right. So, and it looks like we do have a little bit of time. So I can show you that really, really neat trick with the visuals. Those visual filter tools. So up here, so we have our pivot table selected, which awesome, perfect. We'll go ahead and select our Analyze tab, and we'll go ahead and select this tool called Insert Slicer. As you can see, Slicer has brought up many fields. For this purposes, we'll go ahead and select months. And we're going to go ahead and select. Okay. We now have a panel of buttons with a list of months. And you're able to move the panel around on the worksheet. You can select one of the buttons in the panels, and it will update the pivot table of the filter of your choice. So let's go ahead and we can just expand it just a little bit using the circles around the panel until we see December. So let's go ahead and select May. And now it has filtered to only where we can see May's, like who worked in May, what are the contributions in May, etc. And we can also select another month, and it will just update it. And if we ever want to, we no longer need this, we can always right-click and we can remove months.
I have a question for you, Ellen.
Yes.
Is it possible to select multiple months using the slicer?
That I'm aware of. No. If there is, I haven't found a way to do so.
Try pressing Control and clicking.
Well, there we are. Thank you, Meredith. So yes, it is possible to select multiple months and just only seeing those months by clicking and holding down the control. And we have our months. We'll go ahead and delete this one. All right, go ahead and select everything all back. Okay, so the other visual filter tool that we can use is also in the Analyze tab. And this one is the Insert Timeline. So we'll go ahead and select. And the only field that we can use is the date field. So we'll go ahead and select OK. And just like before, you will have a panel that you can move around on your worksheet, and you can expand it however you like. So we'll go ahead and just expand this so we can see all of this. And it is an interactive timeline. So we can always select February and it will show us February. And you can also select multiple months at the same time by clicking and dragging these gray scales on the side of this blue bar, which represents the selected month. So it's really neat. I enjoy this because it narrows down and we can look at very specific data, and we can just focus only on that data. So, do we have any questions so far, Meredith?
One I answered, we had a question about whether or not the insert slicer and the timeline do the same thing as the filter that you have at starting at the top of A1. And I just explained that, yes, they do exactly the same thing, but they have different ways of doing it. And depending on how you're wanting to present this, like if you're sharing this information with, you know, a board of directors or somebody who's investing in your company, or, you know, in a work presentation, it can look nicer to have the other options like the slicer and the timeline. It's also a little quicker to get to the dates, whereas with the filter, you have to open it, you have to click, you have to hit OK. It's a lot more effort, but they do the same thing. So just that question.
Thank you for enlightening us. Appreciate it. All right. That is actually all that I have prepared for the basics of the pivot table. So thank you so much for joining us for this virtual program. For more virtual programs, please visit our Facebook page and our Libraries Lungs blog. You also can learn more about pivot tables through one of our shared resources of lynda.com with library card. If you have any questions about pivot tables, about Excel, please go ahead and I will, Meredith and I will be happy to answer them at this time.
So we haven't had any questions come up right now. I do have a fun thing I could share if you'd like about how to add percentages. I could show that if you want to pass over the control of your
Yeah.
screen to me. Give that a try.
Yes. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, bold and experimental here. We don't do this too often,
Okay.
but it's a fun thing to add. Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. Am I moving now? Yes.
Yep.
There we go. I have the power. Okay. So say you wanted to have percentage of how much each person is contributing. So we're not going to change anything on the table right now. We just want to focus on the people. So we're going to shrink it up so we can just look at them specifically. But we're going to add another row. So we can actually take amount and add it a second time in here. And right now they look exactly the same, but we're going to do the same thing almost that we did with adding the formatting here. We're going to come over and click on it and do the value field settings. And so the default is always going to be sum, but you can change it here to do what you'd like with it. So we want to do our percentage. Let's see if we can find it. Da-da-da. It's on here somewhere.
Is it in the number format?
Ah, here it is, under show values as.
Ah,
We got it. So this is where you get your calculations. So we want percentage of the grand total. And we hit OK. We have their percentage of contribution that they made. So we can see all the different ones here lined out, but we don't want that many, do we? So let's see if we can narrow that down a little. Because we have all of the different percentages. Let's see. This is the one thing I haven't tinkered with, having it have multiple stuff at once. So let's go ahead and take the type out just so we can narrow it down, because we really don't care about the type or the method. Oh, and we have the values in there. We don't need the values in the columns, do we? I guess we do. Let's do, yeah. I'm getting a little rogue here. We'll do type. There we go. Huh, my values jumped out of my value section. That's great. We'll put them back. Gotta love when it goes rogue like that. So we only need, it's not behaving for me. Now I feel silly. I was able to get it to do this earlier. Maybe it was because I was doing it in the 365. That would explain that, I suppose. So we've got our rows, we've got our sum amount, which we should be able to have right there. There we go. Okay, now it's behaving for me. And we want the duplicate. Let go. Okay, there we go. Now it will behave itself. So you can also, if you wanted to, change the field value settings by right-clicking on the column that's highlighted. That's also an option. Let's get it back. There we go. There we are. And you can also change the name because sum of amount to does not clearly label what that information is. So we can go over here to name it either this way or through the value field setting. And we have a custom name there, so we can say percentage. And there, it makes sense. If you're not a fan of the term sum of amount, you can also change that if you wanted to total contributions or, you know, whatever works for you in displaying stuff. So that's an option there.
Thank you, Meredith. That was actually, I learned something.
And you can adjust any other calculations if you want. There's a lot of different options there. So let me just show you what some of the different options are. So you can do percentage of grand total. You can do the percentage of the column total, of the row total. So if you had the subtotals, so say you had, you wanted to have the different types of payment available and you wanted the percentage of that total visible, you could do that. They've got lots of options there. You can also rank them smallest to largest, do a running total percentage. You can do a running total column that keeps track of the total amount as you go down. Lots to work with. And then again, you can use the field to do other stuff like counting the number of times something appears, averaging stuff, doing a max and min. You could do basically like formulas you'd be able to do in Excel, but have it automatically done with the data that you have present. But that is advanced stuff for another day. If you're interested in learning about that sort of stuff, do let us know. We have a survey that is available for filling out after the program. So let us know what you'd like to see more of in that. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Ellen.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that is all that we have here today. As Meredith said, there is a survey at the end of this program. Please fill it out if you would like to learn, if you would like to have a more advanced pivot table class, please let us know. If you would like more or similar classes to this, also let us know. But thank you so much for joining. And we'll see you next time.
And again, a reminder, you will be receiving a follow-up email with a copy of the recording of this, as well as the practice worksheet attached to it for download if you want to try your hand at it. You can also try our lessons on lynda.com, which are available. I'll put the links for lynda.com in the chat box for you, so that if you want to try that, you get free access with your library card. So let me just put that in there for you. There's that. And it's under our research and learn section. And then we also have, if you want one-on-one help, we do have 30-minute appointments you can book for virtual assistance with librarians through Book a Librarian. So I'm going to add that as well to the chat if you're interested. It's also accessible on our webpage. There we go. All right, that's it. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you.